What is up today, YouTube? Today is a video that has been about a year in the coming, and I am so excited to reveal this. Now, obviously, you know by the title, but currently, right now, we are sitting in my old workshop. You can tell it's my old workshop because I took down the pegboards, which I want to get some other wood to put up here because I've been handboarding down here more recently, hence the park I got set up here. But these walls are very depressing, and I really just want to get some to cover them up. But today, we're talking about my new workshop. So when we bought this house, I decided I was going to build something down in the basement, and I did. So I had about 4 feet by 12 feet to work with, and that served me well for a long time. I didn't have a ton of money to put into it. I sunk about $500 total into the workshop, and in about a year's time, I made about $1,000. Now that's not a ton of money. It's nothing to squawk about, but I was able to pay off what I did. So I went to my wife, talked to my parents, I talked to a bunch of other people, and kind of said to them, do you think it would be worth it to have an additional workshop? And at that exact time, my wife's friend and 3 kids were living with us. So running saws and stuff down here, I was getting yelled at all the time. So it kind of made sense to have an outside building that I could go to. So a bunch of stuff happened. I ended up looking at 4 different shed companies, and where I wanted it on my property was a very narrow gap to get in there. So behind my enclosed porch was a plot of land that was decently big. It used to be a garage, and the entrance to that is only about 3.5 feet wide. So the first 3 companies I spoke to told me that the $3,000 shed I wanted would be now $10,000 to have it built on site. The last company I talked to were great guys, and it ended up costing me a total of $5,000. A $3,600 shed turned into $5,000 to have them come build it on site, but there was no issues with that. So they tell me it'll be another $1,000 to level the land to drop it on. So at first I was like, okay, that's kind of blowing my budget. I had a budget of $7,000 to outfit this whole thing. And that was kind of like getting real close to what I was going to do. So I said, I'll level it myself. And my wife, my parents, they came over. We spent about 2 weekends. We leveled all of it. And what we found out was there was still a piece of the floor from the old garage. So we found this 4 foot by 6 foot by 10-inch thick concrete slab. So I called them up and said, hey, I really don't have the time to deal with this. You guys come out and do it. I'll pay the money. And they told me no. They said that they used nothing but excavator equipment and it could not get back there. So actually under this table right now, I have a mini jackhammer. So I went out, instead of $1,000, I spent $250. We broke it out in pieces, put it on the sides out of the way, and got the whole thing leveled. So that took about 2 weeks longer than I expected. But they did come out, they did drop in the shed, everything was fantastic and good, and I paid it off in full. So now I had about $2,000-ish to work with to outfit the whole thing. And that would be workbenches, that would be insulation. So the first thing I did was insulation. I insulated all the walls, and that ate up about another $400. I never knew insulation was so expensive, but insulated all the walls, and I was able to get some materials for the workbenches for free, so got the workbenches built next. But the kids living in my house really wanted a swing set for the summer. And swing sets are about $1,400-$1,500. So I found one for $70, all rotted wood, and I spent about 2 months building that, which meant that my workshop got put on hold. So while that was a bummer, I got to build that, and to be honest, they moved out before I finished, so it's never even been used. So that's how it goes. But then wood, during peak COVID, spikes through the roof, and now if I want to put walls up, I have to blow my budget. Wood that was now $20 is now $80, $90. And it just didn't make sense. So I kind of just let my workshop go. I did get power in there. I forgot to mention that. I got power in right after the workbenches. And that was another $250. So I wait all this time. Last year, I went to a large amount of funerals. My mother's side of the family, nearly all of them passed away. That was a little bit older. And I kind of started to feel depressed. So I just kind of sealed up the workshop and didn't step foot in there in a long time. And one day I told myself, okay, you bought it, you have it, you have to go in there and make something. And I don't even remember what I made. It was something with like 2 screws and a block of wood. but it made me want to build again. So while wood was still expensive, I started working out of my workshop, such as like the rails that I've been selling. And wood just came back down, maybe in the past month, maybe in the past 2 months, just finally came back down to where it was before. So I was like, this is my moment. I need to finish my shop. So for the past 2 weeks, I have been going nonstop nearly every night up until roughly when I go to bed, just building this thing out. And it's finally done. Besides some decorations and maybe a shelf over here I might want later on, for right now, I can honestly say I'm finished. So that's what took me about a year to get this done. But let's go into there now and check this out. Okay, so we're going to take this in sections. So once I got the walls up, I decided to paint them. Now, it's not uncommon for me to work with a headache, and having bright walls is a nightmare, especially when I already have white pegboard. So I decided to settle on the color for black cherry and keep it flat. Once that was done, it was time to move on and build a shelf. And when I build things, I always do the same test, and I know a bunch of carpenters and builders and that who do the same test, which is, can it hold me? So the shelf honestly could probably hold 1,000 pounds if I had to guess, but definitely can hold however much this weighs plus 200-pound me. So once I got the shelf built, that held a large amount of my supplies. I got everything from the first ever toolbox that was given to me that I would consider a real toolbox, to small buckets of wood that I can pull out of, to all the tools I really don't touch too much. From there, let's move on. Next, we got a little bit of a table saw place. I have probably about 12 feet to work with, so no, I could not cut down a full 8-foot sheet. I'd have to pull this out into the middle of the floor, which is absolutely fine. The newest thing I added today was a chip bag, which I am stoked on because I didn't know about them in the beginning. And I have a piece of wood mounted here because my table saw is too big for the stand. And when I took this off to bring it up from the bottom workshop, there was a sandcastle in here of sawdust up to about here. That was a nightmare to clean up. So, got a new bag on it, got it placed against the wall, out of the way, and I also cut the stand down to actually be a reasonable height, because if you've seen it before, we'd call it dangerous. Let's move on to wood storage in that. So for wood storage, I am an auto mechanic, and it's not uncommon to have a large amount of 55-gallon drums laying around. What is not common is to have plastic ones. So they allowed me to take these from work. I cut the tops off, scrubbed them out, and now they hold a large amount of my sheet goods and lumber. On top of that, I'm going to get a little closer and show you guys, but I made some small lumber racking that can hold, obviously, 8-foot pieces of wood, but also the 10-foot pieces of conduit that I use to make the rails that you guys have been buying. So it's really easy to store 10 feet here compared to where I kept it on the ceiling for a while. But let's get a little closer and show you off the hooks I made. So all I did was take some scrap steel I had, weld some pieces together, and I did 4 of those going on down. And yes, I also did chin-ups off each one of these. Let's move on to a couple of the decorations. So I know it's flipped for you, but this coat actually says Master Craftsman. And why can I wear this? Well, 1, because I bought it from a flea market, and 2, because I make anything and everything. So like, this is all my spray paint. I have a couple of colors. But up here, I got a couple of Viking axes and a couple of Viking knives. I did make a video on those, I believe. I can't remember. But decided to throw those up there, and I can take them down for photo shoots anytime I want. Now, if I walk down here and I flip around, I got a Viking shield that was given to me for Christmas by my uncle, but the swords I made, and they fit perfectly. And I plan on throwing so much more decorations on the ceiling. I got some antique skateboards I have not been able to put up in a long time. But one thing I did make today real quick is I am calling this my handboard graveyard, and I actually have enough for a second one. So I want to run those down the ceiling as well. But now we are on to the workbenches. Here is my little welding station. I got a little box I can weld within and a light to light up the inside. And it works pretty decently. Most of the time I'm welding on the lid. And if you look around this area, you'll see some burns on the floor. Trust me, I didn't do it. But we have 16 feet of pegboard. Now, the only reason I'm using pegboard is because a local hardware store was closing down and I bought each sheet for $1. Otherwise, pegboard kind of sucks. But I have my miter station here that lines up perfectly across the table so I can drop 8-foot pieces of wood. and cut it perfectly. I have a bunch of stuff up, anything from writing utensils to hammers to every tool you could use or need. I have my charging station over here and my impact drivers and drills here. I also, under the table, have all my other battery-powered tools, and there's tools stashed everywhere. Once I was finished building the workbench, I had a large amount of scrap wood that I didn't have really a place for. So I decided to build 2 homemade drawers. Definitely not the best. They don't even use like actual sliders on a drawer. They just use wood and friction. But they work great. They hold up great. And I am so stoked to start building in here. Once I get a logo design, I might get a big sign made for in here. But until then, there is no branding. But welcome to Rat Tail. And over the years, it's been Rat Tail Woodworking. It's been now Rat Tail Ramps. It was Rat Tail Metalworking until my wife said that I can't name everything Rat Tail. So somewhere else on my property is Dragonfly Forge. Because not all of my stuff is in here. I never expected me to become the guy who had a bunch of sheds. But right now, on a very small property, I have one shed that holds all my lawn equipment. I have another shed that's dedicated just to being a blacksmith shop. And then this is my main shop that I hang out in. I have everything I could want in here. Right here is my heater. And it takes a little while. It's a small heater, but it heats this place just fine. And I'm so excited to actually be done with building it and start making products for you guys. Now, if you made it to the end of the video, good for you. Thank you for actually caring about me. And I'm going to show off in the bonus clip the newest thing I've been working on that hopefully you handboarders will get excited for, and I'll be able to get on the market and sold to you guys soon enough. But as always, thank you for liking, commenting, and subscribing. As always, guys, keep pushing forward and have a great day. So as I tried to think of more obstacles to make to sell, one that kept coming to mind is a parking curb. To recreate and mimic a parking curb would be really awesome and really cool, but I couldn't figure out how I wanted to do it. If I made it out of concrete, it'd be too heavy. If I made it out of resin, it would be too expensive. If I made it out of wood, would people complain? So I ended up finally finding a solution to it. So this is all plastic, painted yellow. It looks beautiful. It's pretty much to scale. And then I took a couple of 1x4s and painted them in a stone texture to mimic cinder blocks. And hopefully tomorrow I'll be able to assemble this together and test it.